Hey everybody, this is another CS0 Intro to Java Programming video. In this video, I'm going to talk about Sentinel controlled loops. The previous video was on loop basics, and it was all about count controlled loops. We used a for loop and a while loop. And I'd like to review those really quickly before I go into the Sentinel controlled loops. Loop basics, we had the test for and test while, and I just want to talk about how they're similar and how they're different. Our while loop looked like this. We've got our while reserved word, and then we've got our loop end condition or conditional statement right here. We've got our update, and we have our control variable. Initialization of our control variable was elsewhere. The initialization was right up here, okay? So I declare my control variable at the top, I initialize it in this initialize variables method, and then I use it in the loop end conditional statement, and I use it in my update. So the while loop, you can spread things out all over the place, okay? If I want, I could take my update and I could put it before my statements, which would give me a different result. I could put it after my statements. I could put it somewhere in the middle if I have many statements. The while allows me to move things around however I want. For loop's a little bit different. We go to for test, and the for loop has everything right here in the loop header. We've got our initialization of the control variable, we've got our loop end condition, we've got our update. And I said in the last video that the for loops are not as flexible as the while, but I kind of lied. I can take this initializer out, and I can put it outside of the loop if I want. Oops. I can put it up here. And you see that I now has the method level scope, so it's accessible anywhere in the method. Well, if it's accessible anywhere in the method, it's also accessible inside the loop. So I initialize it out here, and I'm using it in my loop end condition, and I'm using it in my update. You can see I don't have anything there in my initializer. All right? Now, I'm going to take this out, my update out, and I'm going to put it right down here. My update is now down at the bottom of my loop body. Well, what if I wanted to put it before my programming statement? I could do that as well. I have nothing here in my update. This is starting to look a lot like a while loop, right? Where I distributed things throughout. I put my update inside the body. I put my initialization out somewhere else in the code, and I use it in the loop header. All I've got in my header right now is a loop end condition. Interesting. So the for is actually really pretty flexible. I can do a lot of stuff with it. But generally, you're not going to do this with a for, because this is if you're starting to do things with a for that are while-like, why not just use a while? All right? Now, the way I use these loops, when do I use a for and when do I use a while? I use a for loop almost every time I have a count-controlled situation. In other words, when I know how many times I want to loop or how many iterations I need, when I know where I start and I know where I end, and that stuff is all very clear to me, I use a for loop. If I have a situation where I don't know where it's going to begin, where it's going to end, and I don't have a count-controlled situation, I use a while. Now let's talk about those situations where we don't know when they're going to begin or end. Those are situations where we would use a Sentinel controlled loop. Let's think about a scenario. Let's say I have an application that is a pizza order form, and I want to ask the user if they want to order a pizza. They say yes, and they place their order, and at the end of the order I ask them, would you like to place another order? They say yes. We repeat that process of entering everything in. I ask them again, would you like to place another order? They do all that stuff to enter what pizza they want, and then I ask them again, would you like to order another pizza? If they say no, I stop. Well, what I did is I repeated the process of ordering a pizza 3 times, and the user told me when to stop. This is a repetition statement by nature. I'm repeating the process of ordering pizza until the user says to stop. Well, I don't know how many times the user is going to order a pizza before they say stop. It might be 2 times, it might be 0 times, it might be 16 times, it might be anywhere in between. I just don't know. That's a situation where I can't use a count control loop because I don't know when that counter would end. What I'm going to do instead is use something called a sentinel. The word sentinel essentially means a guard. A sentinel would be a guard that stands at a castle gate and allows people through that have the appropriate credentials, and then prevents them from getting through if they don't have the appropriate credentials. Let's take a look at an example of a sentinel controlled loop. Now before we do that, I want to explain some of the things in this program. This is going to be my standard inner class, or pardon me, no, this doesn't use an inner class, I don't think. Nope, this one doesn't. This is just my standard GUI template that I've used going all the way back to the very beginning. So Sentinel loops extends JFrame. It has a Boolean called loop flag. It's got a JLabel. It's got an int called count. It's got a text area called output, and it's got a JPanel called output panel. It's got a JList called food list, and it's got a default list model called model. These are new. I'm going to get into what they are and how they work in just a little bit. My main method does all the stuff that a main does. Sentinel loops frame is instantiated. I set the size. I'm setting it to 400 by 200 high. I set my layout to a border layout. I create my GUI. I call a method that I created called execute methods, and then I've got my set visible to true. Let's take a look at my create GUI. Create GUI is way down here, set default close operation as always, and then I go do setup list and setup output. Setup list is going to set up my JList, and we'll take a look at what that JList is and see how it works. All right, so a JList works on a structure of having a model and then its GUI component. I'm going to run this so you can see what it looks like. Got to make sure that I've got the right one here. That would be example 2 that I want to run. It's going to get a J option pane that'll ask me what foods I like. Cheese. Would you like to enter another? Yeah. Pizza, also with cheese. Would you like to enter another? Sure. Ice cream, love it. Enter another? Sure. Sushi? Great. Thai curry? Love it. Okay. And do I want to enter another? No, I stop. And what it does then is it's going to use that list and it's going to print it out onto the screen here. Okay? So the JList is a J component that looks at a series of items and it renders them to that J component. Think of it kind of like it almost behaves like a label or a text area, and it's going to display that list vertically on that list. Let's go back down to the GUI here. Setup list. There's this thing called a model. The list model is the data with all of those items that are going to get drawn to that list. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 items, whatever, and then we add them to the list. The food list is my actual JList. So food list gets new JList, and we pass the model into it. So after the model gets created, it goes into the JList. And then add food list to our GUI. So that's going to set up our GUI. The rest of the stuff, setting up output, this is our text area, it's nothing new. And so I create my list and create my output. Now let's take a look at these 2 examples. This example was my one with the list. I've got my loop flag set to false, and then I've got something called a do while. Do while is used every single time you want to do something for sure while some certain condition is true. The do allows the user into the body of the loop. So we do everything, and then we check the loop end condition. So if the loop end condition is false, we don't do it again. If it's true, we go right back up to the top and do everything again. So what's happening in here is we're going to add an element to our list model. Our list model, once again, is just that collection of words that we're going to add to our list. And I'm going to use JOption pane, show input dialog, what food do you like, to get a string from the user, and that string is going to go into that element and add to the model. After that, I'm going to use a new type of JOption pane called show confirm dialog. Show confirm dialog is that yes, no button thing. If I press yes, it's going to return 0. If I press no, it's going to return 1. Okay? So if I say yes, it's going to have 1 in it, so I'm going to skip over choice 0. If it's yes, I skip this over. Or pardon me, yes is 0, no is 1. So if it's yes, I get in here and I set the loop flag to true. If it's no, I get in here and I set the loop flag to false. This is our sentinel. Loop flag is our sentinel. It's like our guard that tells us when we can get into the loop and when we can't. If it's set to false, it means we can't get into the loop. If it's set to true, we can get into the loop. So if we said yes and our choice is 0, we get back into the loop, we go right back up to the top, we ask for another food, we ask them if they want to add another one again, and if they say no, it has 1, loop flag set to false, we get down and check our sentinel. If it's false, we don't get to go in, and we move on. Now, after that while loop is done, asking for foods and asking if we want another, we're going to actually append all of the stuff in our list model to our output. So I'm going to get everything out of the model. Okay, so for int I is 0, I less than model.getSize I plus plus. This is our loop, and what we're doing is called a traversal. A traversal means we're going to access every item in a collection from the beginning all the way to the end. So what I'm going to do is use my control variable to get things out of the model. Model.get will retrieve an item in that list. So if it's 0, it's going to get the first one. If it's 1, it'll get the second one. 2, it'll get the third one, so on and so forth, all the way to the end. So it's going to get them, cast them to a string and concatenate them with a new line, and then append it to the output. And that's how this one is going to work. So that's a sentinel controlled loop. It only lets us in if our sentinel is true. Let's take a look at the other example. Example 1. Example 1 is a little bit simpler. It's got a loop flag set to true, and this is our sentinel. If it's true, we get in. If it's false, we don't get in. So while loop flag is true, choice is going to be show confirm dialog, hello, may I greet you again? It says annoying greeting, yes or no. If choice is 1, we're going to set it to false, and we won't get back in. If choice is 0, we won't set it to false, and we'll get back in. And each time, we're going to increase the counter. So I'm going to run this. Well, may I greet you again? Yes. May I greet you again? Yes. May I greet you again? Yes. No. And now it's going to say, I can't believe that you actually clicked yes 4 times. I only clicked it 3 times, so there's an error here. What I want you to do is try and figure out why it has an error. Take a minute, stop the video, try and fix it, and then come back. All right, you're back. I assume that you figured it out or you just gave up. The reason is that it's counting no matter what if I hit yes or no. So when I hit no, it gives us that extra 1. I only want to increment the counter if I gave a yes choice. So this would do it. If it's no, we'll set this to false, and then we won't get back into the loop. If it's yes, we'll update count, we'll get back into the loop. So we'll test it, see how it works. Yes, 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 no. 3 times. It worked just fine. All right, so that's Sentinel controlled loops. Sentinel controlled loops are controlled based on some sort of Sentinel value. It could be a Boolean variable, it could be a Boolean expression, it could be anything that resolves to a Boolean, but it's something that's going to prevent you from getting into the loop if that condition is not met. Right, thanks for watching.